Hi, this is Dennis with Second Chance Tackle. We're back again doing our pandemic projects. Wish I could change the tone of that, but we're still in it. And thank you to all of the first line responders, including healthcare workers, nursing homes, teachers, essential personnel, law enforcement, emergency workers, and so on. Thank you for all it is that you do to keep us safe during this pandemic. And sincerely and heartfelt thank you to all that are working on our behalf. We're going to continue. I got a made in the USA, big guy, probably the biggest one in the SpinFisher line. This is the 850 SS. This one belongs to Sonny. He sent it in for service and cleanup, so that's what we're going to do. And I thought you all would enjoy the video, so we're going to make it on this one. This is a huge surf reel, and it's a workhorse. Some like to call it a beast. It is. It belongs probably on a 10-foot surf pole, where it's ideal for trolling. If you have a heavy 6.5, 7-foot pole, you're dragging something out of the back of your boat. This one works very well for that as well. All right, this has that feature. I call it the slam bail. It has a feature where when you rotate around, the back of the bail whacks the stud. A lot of folks just prefer to close this one manually. It's kind of what I do on these older reels. Just don't like banging things, particularly when they involve a reel. But if you want to take that note, go right ahead. Also on these things, it's interesting. This is a skirted spool, so that's designed for casting. You never have to worry where your position is in the rotor cup when you cast to get as long as you can. But this is not a long cast spool. We've seen that on some of the pit reels and the like. You'll have a very long cast here. I think, forget what they call it, Spin Master, I think is the one that it's called. It'll have a very tall, narrow spool for a long cast. This is not for long cast, but you could certainly throw it a long way with a long pole, like a 10 or 12-foot pole. So let's get started then. I've got my glove on. That protects me from the older greases and oils and who knows what in the reel. I've got a parts tray here where I'm going to put my pieces and parts. It's the bottom of a milk jug. I'm going to put those pieces there so that when I go to reinstall, I know where to find them. This is the feature of the reel. It has a cup underneath the spool. It's called a skirted spool. That's why it's SS. And if the water gets under the spool here, it'll run off to the sides rather than running under like a cup rotor and getting into the reel itself. So it's an attempt at waterproofing. We take the spool off, or we can take the handle off by turning it backwards. In this case, it's a clockwise rotation. I'm going to leave the big parts outside my parts tray. This does not need to be removed. This is a cap that holds a felt washer in it. There's a felt washer here. We're going to make sure we oil that. And that felt washer is going to keep oil on the side plate spurring. Okay, let's take the 3 side plate screws out. And this one is probably comparable, I guess, to the SpinFisher 6 now, VI. In the versions, I believe this was version 3. I always get them confused. I think the 8500 premiered with version 4. But the SS 850 was the third one, and that continued that black and gold theme that was picked up by the Z series, and it survives to this day as black and golds, although it seems like more gold is taking over these days. I don't know. All right, I like to take the side plate screws out, even if I know it. I like to take them out and make sure that all 3 of these side plate screws are the same. If they're not, then you want to identify where the one is that's different and do that. I pull off the side plate next. And I got a little bit of a stuck bearing there, it seems. I guess now I'm going to take that side off. See if we can't work that off. And this is what happens if you're servicing the reel and it hasn't been serviced in a while. we're going to hit this with some penetrating oil. We're going to come back to it. And unfortunately, there's not much I can do now. And yes, we all have this same problem. So this case has been sitting about 10 minutes now. I'm just going to use a lever. Be careful with these things if you're going to do what I'm doing here. I'm just going to use a light lever and try and pull up. I see I've got it started. That's a good thing. Try a little leverage from the back side. As you can see, the bearing's working its way out now. Always a good thing. You need a couple of things in reel repair. I always kind of hark back to what I was told. One of the things you need is a sense of humor, and the other is patience. And the sense of humor goes for things like that when you drop things in the middle of a video. And the patience is something like that WD-40. Don't, or any kind of penetrating oil for that matter. Don't assume that there's going to be instant results. Sometimes you just got to let that stuff take its time to do it right. And in this case, it was about 10 minutes. So just go find yourself a way to make a cup of coffee or tea or whatever your preferred beverage is. Sit back and relax for a moment and come back to it. Generally, just leaving it alone is the best answer. I'm going to flood that bearing with some oil. Put that into my parts tray. Take the side plate. The side plate was relatively clean. But we'll get whatever it is. And then now you see why, if you're looking inside that reel while I'm doing this, you see why I wear my protective glove. I'm not quite sure what that grease is there, but I am sure there's grease there. All right, we're going to rotate this all the way down so we have access to the two screws on the crosswind tie down. These are all brass. This is what's beautiful about this reel. It's a reel that's built for the long term. It's not something that's just going to solve a season or two. This thing will be here a long time, and this one has been here a long time. Like I said, this is I believe this is the third generation of the reel, and we're on generation 6. So even if they update those generations every 5 years, this is 15, 20 years old at a minimum. And I'll probably go do some research a little bit later to get the exact date. If you want, one of the beauties of that mysticparts.com, not only can you get the reel schematics and order parts, whatever parts are available for your Penn reels there, they also have the owner's manuals, and they also give you the specs on the reel. So just take your time, go look for that. If you have questions about when a reel was made, that'll be my resource when I go to take a look there. All right, we want to pull the axle shaft once we remove that hold down clip. Just simply comes up and out. If it doesn't come up and out easy, if you feel like you're tugging the thing after it's cleared the bar, it means you have a bent axle shaft. So if you have tight performance on your reel and you're pulling and it's not working, it's because the axle shaft got bent, which is not an uncommon thing. All right, we'll probably have the same wrestling match over here. You have a screw that ties down the bearing. So let's go ahead and take the screw out. Now you see that I have a box. Every now and then it comes into view, but I have a box with a whole bunch of tools in that. I recommend that you keep your boxes of tools close at hand, and that you get the appropriate screwdriver for the job at hand. That's a wide tip because I have a wide slot in the screw here. You don't want to butterfly the slots out. Now we should be able to pull this out. Then we can take the rest of the pieces out. I use a needle nose pliers to grip the crosswind, and we can see this reel's just sluggish because it's got a lot of years of activity in there without a lot of TLC. But the brass on that main gear there, that can't be beat. And then we'll take the top off. See if I get lucky and can use my little Mitchell tool here. So this is a Mitchell tool, but it usually works on Penn, except that that's not the right size. So let me just dig with me. I know you'll give me a moment there. Wow, that guy's tightened down. So it's good to have an open end wrench as well as a box end for gripping it. You can also use deep sockets on these. That one was just being stubborn. I think that got pretty well tightened. All right, then we can take our assembly off. We're going to pull all of this off in a moment. I just figured I was going to take that off while I set the other stuff aside here. Okay, let's just leave that for a moment. We'll get back here and clean that up. Let's pay our attention now to the grime, the scene of the grime. There we go. All right, paper towels, Q-tips, penetrating oil, like new. It usually gets rid of the old grease. While you're doing this now, check the teeth. Now these are dirty. I'm going to go clean these up. Check the teeth. Make sure they're not worn or bent or cracked. Cracked is pretty much a plastic thing. There are a lot of plastic components in reels. Not this one, but others. And in those cases, if you have plastic idler gear, for example, on a 209 pen, go ahead and make sure you check for the cracks as well. That's kind of structural integrity there. All right, let's just get the last of that off the stud. All right, one into the box. Well, we can see why this one's sluggish. It's just got either no grease or dried grease. This one's like almost like putty, which is why one of the reasons why I wear this glove on my hand here, because from time to time you do get into these older reels with a lot of junk. And even if you're not sticking your hand right in the junk, you can see I like to put the older stuff that I remove on a paper towel, and oftentimes my hand will wind up on that towel. So do your best to protect yourself there. All right, it's time to get a new towel there. That's the rotor nut. We're going to go put that in there. Again, we're going to use a penetrating oil now, different way here. We're using this to cut grease as opposed to free apart. But same idea, it's multi-purposed. It's always good to have that on your desk, whether it's a WD-40, Liquid Wrench, Master Blaster, or the generic penetrating oil from the local hardware store. They all work well. I'll do the same thing I did here to the teeth of the crosswind gear. Just making sure that the channel's clear. And same thing on the outside here, just getting all the old grease off. Old grease will do nothing but inhibit a reel at this point. And then we're just going to check all the teeth, make sure that they're all even and uniform and not chipped or cracked. Do the same thing on the one that drives the crosswind block. There is a little bit of dirt in there, so let's get that out as well. For that, I'm using a small metal brush. You can find these things in the dollar store, 3-pack with a hard bristle, soft bristle, and a wire. It's worth the investment. All right, that's going to go into there. Crosswind block up next. Do the same thing here. Clean the slots. Clean the saltwater taffy off from underneath. Get the stuff up top. Get rid of that one. Kind of do a final cleaning after you did that rough part there. Rinse and repeat. I just saw one of these come in on a 4300. It was totally corroded, the crosswind block. All right, so that takes care of that side. Let's go up top then. We have this anti-reverse drive, which actually is going to ride on the hex screw on the bottom of the rotor. So you're going to need to make sure that you get that lined up when it's time to put that back. What I like to do here is to remove the crosswind lever. Careful here. You want to make sure that it comes out nicely. If it doesn't, hit it with that penetrating oil before you try and brute force it. Because if you crack this one in the case, well, there goes your 850. All right. get the orientation right. It's kind of hard to once you do this for a while, it's kind of hard to mix up the orientation on a crosswind gear. Let's just say we separated it here, and you're trying to figure out how does it go. Well, you do need to know what the upside is. This has a finger jointed pressure, and what happens is that's going to grab the wheel, and this is why I say it's kind of hard to mess it up if you know how it works, because you're always going to get a jigsaw puzzle match on the anti-reverse dog or lever to the gear. So what's happening here, and the reason why you see it's discolored, is while it's cranking, it's pulling away from that dog, and it's not setting, but friction will pull it back as soon as you stop the reeling, and that's what will set the dog. All right. Just going to lay that off to the side for a moment. We're not going forward with that. So then I have the bearing assembly here that I want to pull. I'm going to take this and set that to the off position to get the dog out of the way here. 3 screws. Again, important to note a couple of things as you're doing this one. Note the orientation of the plate. Sometimes these plates are not perfect. But they are triangular, and sometimes there's a bend in one side versus the other, or there's a raised portion of one, or there's a different screw in one side. So I like to do what I'm doing here, which is to take the 3 screws out of the collar, make sure that they're all the same. And in this case, it's an odd configuration of screws, so it can only fit one way. So you don't really need to worry if what's top, what's bottom here. And then we should be able to pull out the pinion gear, the bearing, and the little collar. Now I gotta say that I'm shocked. That's the easiest one of these bearings that's ever come out on me, I think, or close to it. I like that feel. But I do have a lot of folks do ask the question. It shouldn't seize in these because these are well made, but there's a lot of them that aren't, and they use steel pieces and parts, and those things tend to just rust into each other. So we have our case available for cleaning now, which is what we're going to do. We have our bearing assembly down below, and we have our pinion gear and the like, which needs to be worked on. So I like to not jump around on wheels too much. I'm just going to work up top here to clean this section out, getting that old grease out of there. Do the same thing. I'll use the penetrating oil as a cleaning agent right now. And I do this for 2 reasons. One, if you're starting projects all over the place, it's easy to get lost. If you're got the parts laid out right in front of you, you won't lose them, generally speaking. And you'll find that your memory is a lot better the closer into the parts you are. Just again, I hit that bearing first with the WD-40, which reminds me to tell you that WD-40 is not a very good lubricant. It's an excellent cleaner. It's an excellent drying agent. But use fishing reel grease when you go to reinstall these fishing reel greases and oils. Don't use the WD-40 or any other penetrating oil as a general lubricant. All right, I've oiled up the bearing. I've cleaned up the little collar. I hope you've been taking pictures along the way. This is an easy place to get confused as you start to wander. And if you did, then you're going to sit there and go, well, how did that go back in now? And why did I take that off? And so on. Or how did I take that off? All right. The pinion gear is clean. You want to do the same thing with the pinion gear. These are well machined. Everybody is saying today's CNC cut gears and the like, you know what, they got nothing over this. All right, check them all, make sure that the spirals are uniform, that they're not chip, crack, busted, etc. Now we can go ahead and lube that. I'm going to use Penn Precision Wheel Grease for that. Use my little brush. Get a healthy dose of grease on there since it's been a while. Since this one is got a fresh lube, we're going to go ahead and put the bearing back on. go ahead and put the collar back on. We're going to go ahead and reseat that right in here. Now we had this little plate. Now when I took that plate off, I put top side up, so that's the bottom. This is the top. In this case, it probably doesn't matter. It looks like it's just a flat piece of metal with the 3 screws. However, if you're working on other reels, notice that some of them are not the same. And if you get stuck along the way, it will become problematic. All right. Those of you that know me know it's time to go get some refreshments as I struggle with my little screws. So the SpinFisher series has been around for quite some time. A lot of people ask me what's my favorites of them. I like the next series after this, the ones that went to the graphite cases. And for example, the 4300, it's just a little bit lighter weight, and it still had all the advantages that this one does, but lighter. And I guess that's the only reason I would say that. I think that probably is, I don't think there's much difference. Somebody will tell me, yeah, you know, we got CNC cut gearing, we got more bearings, we got prettier looks and the like on the 5s and 6 series. I guess, you know, if you're into the fashion industry, I guess that's probably true. But I think for performance, the 5500 series, for example, is about as good as you're going to get on these reels. All right, so now we want to come back over here and we want to put our assembly back in place. I already showed you how that goes, so I might as well just put both of them on at the same time. You can't put one on without the other, so you might as well just join them up like that and lay it in. Center your dog over the hole. Remember, this has got a shoulder on it, this one. And much like a bail on a Mitchell, for example, which has those shoulders or collars, you just have to be exact about it. Don't assume that you're going to get it. All right, and then you need to center this. See how it's centered there? There's no magic there in terms of centering, other than that's what you need to do. If you use your dogs as guides, sometimes that helps. But again, it's not exact. And then you, with your mating on that hex nut there, just have to kind of press down and work it. It's always good to try and figure out where you are in the cycle. We'll just see how well we do here. And I think I got lucky. So you know you got lucky when you're flush here and you have enough to grab the top of the nut. If that pinion gear is not coming through, you didn't match that. All right, then we'll tighten that down. Go for a spin. Got a nice spin going. We have an anti-reverse. Yes, we do. So you're all set on the top end. Bottom end needs just a little bit more cleaning. I see some residual grease lying around in there, so let's get that out of the way. Speaking of getting out of the way, I just decided I'm going to poke this through. I'm going to do the same thing with the other side bearing. And just oil it up and let it sit there off to the side while I'm doing my cleaning. There's no real easy way to clean this. It's just kind of a lot of manual effort there, and I know that it doesn't make for great videos, but hopefully every now and then I'll give you a piece of information along the way while I'm trying to work through this. All right, that's clean. This is soaking. Let's go ahead and put the reel back together then. We've already cleaned our crosswind block. We're going to use that same Penn grease. Put some, this block gets grease everywhere. Gets it on the back side because it's going to ride along the case. Gets it on the front side because the crosswind block is going to ride on it. Gets it on the teeth because the drive off of the main gear is going to do that. And you want to put a little bit on the stud on the inside here where it goes. When you install the crosswind block, install it with the stud down. That's going to crosswind gear. Stud down for the block. Block is next. You have that channel with that stud going to ride in, so make sure you get some nice grease in there. We've already greased the face of the crosswind gear, but it doesn't hurt to put grease onto the back end of this, which is going to ride along that gear. Also doesn't hurt to put a little bit of grease in the channel where that slides on both sides. Next up then, we can put that gear, put the bearing on the back side in. And I'm going to hold that bearing now because we know it's going to slide out if I don't hold it. Now we take our main gear. Watch it, that other one slide out while we go and do the same thing here. Good amount of grease onto the teeth. You don't have to get in every tooth, but get enough of it in there. If you put too much in, it's just going to collect inside and do no good for anybody. Back side, it drives the crosswind. A little bit of grease onto the piece that's going to go into the bearing. Hold that bearing again and insert the main gear. And next up then would be your axle shaft. Make sure that's clean. Now this is one that doesn't get a lot of grease, because if you put too much grease in, it's just going to slide out the pinion gear. Is that enough? Alright, there's a flat indentation in the side of that axle shaft. That's what the face is over here. So just go ahead and bring that on down until you can line that up like that. Then you have your tie down. I have a variety of little picks and things. Kind of helps me center and hold. In this case, I need to center and hold because I have those two little screws. One of our fellow viewers told me to go ahead and put grease on there to kind of fill that cavity and help you when you go to reinstall those small screws. From time to time it works. This time it worked. There you go. Now don't tighten this one all the way down, because that hold down over there on that side does move around a little bit. I'll go ahead and repeat. Grab the other one. And once you get the second one started, then you can tighten them both down. All right, we're at the point now where Sonny's going to have this one ready to go fishing in just a little bit. Make sure they're tight. This is a moving part. If you leave this one proud, it's going to hit this main gear on the way up. So you want to make sure you have that covered. Grab that grease brush. Make sure you get the grease onto the piece that's going to sit in the opposite bearing. Go ahead and put that side plate back on now. We have the three side plate screws. And I'm not going to tie these down. I'm just going to get them started. Then I'm going to put that bearing on to make sure that it seats properly. Because those are pretty tight tolerances there if you get it messed up just a little bit. And there's no particular sequence when you're working triangular screws. If there was 4, you would kind of do an X pattern. But those you don't. We've oiled this bearing. There's 2 sides. There's a little plastic side to that. Put that on the inside. That's the way it came out. Sometimes you need more hand strength than I have. There we go. What you do need is patience. There's that felt ring. We're going to put this on. And now we can tighten down that those outside screws. Again, make sure you have a screwdriver that's appropriate for the slots. And then we'll just be on to servicing those drag washers after we close up the other side. So let's go over to the other side. We know we have that screw that's got to go in because we look in our parts tray, and there it is. I like to put as much as I can by hand and turning these screws and nuts. I just don't like the idea of cross-stripping these, which is a common occurrence, unfortunately. Get that wide screwdriver now. Oh, we know it works because we just turned it by hand there, didn't we? Took the suspense out of that one. It's killing me. All right. Grab that. Grab the handle. Now, this handle hasn't gotten any lubrication in some time. You can put a little bit of oil on there just to keep it from, you want to get oil on that too. All right, I was looking for my little squirt bottle, but this will be fine. You want to make sure that you soak that felt ring with oil. That'll keep the bearing oiled. I expect nothing but good things with this. And we have nothing but good things with that. All right, let's just finish then with the bearing, with the spool service. You have a C-clip underneath here. I use one of my pointy tools. It is a spring, it will shoot, so be careful. So I'm having trouble hooking from behind and pulling because I'm hitting the drag washer underneath. Or from the other side. So that's the C-clip. You want to hold it. We should have a series of drags in here, and these are relatively new, so I always get a question about the sequences on them, so let's just review that because they are different drags. I'm going to clean out the cavity first. Alright, Teflon washer goes first. I've seen people put the metal washer in there and then they say that my drag doesn't work. Then there's a hex. There's actually an octagonal, I guess. Looks like there's 8 sides to that. Then there's an HT100. I believe that's the same one as the Long Beach 60. We have another lock washer. Oh, that shouldn't be. We should have a hex around. And the second, the 2 lock washers should not be together. The cap washer. We have our clip. The clip rides in a groove. Hold it again because when you go to compress it, it will flip. Make sure that it's in those screws. Like that. Load that up on top of your axle shaft. You need to align the washers to the There we go. The keyed washer wasn't working properly. Take your drag button in. Tighten this one down. Drop of oil onto the swing arms on the bail. This one doesn't need anything. It's a dead end. It's only a piece of wire there, but it doesn't hurt. And there we go. So that's it. That's the Penn 8500 SS. If you like that, please indicate that on the video. If you want to see more, please subscribe. If you have a reel that needs to be worked on and you would like me to service it, then please contact me on the business card that follows. So with that, this is Dennis with Second Chance Tackle. Have a great day.